So, in the thread asking for questions for the podcast, my friend Winston Carter posed a question about what I would say to younger people who are going down a bad path. And it's essentially the same question of like, what, if anything, could I say to my 18-year-old self to possibly have had my life pan out differently? I'm not going to answer this in the podcast, pretty much because despite the fact that Mr. Binge and we are kindred spirits, we're soul sisters of the male variety, whatever, we're going to differ on the way that we would answer this question, just because we have different preferences. We flock together but have different feathers. But okay, so yeah, his answer is just not going to echo what I say here. So I'm going to do it here. Dedicated time for it here. Now, I'm also going to answer it in two different ways. The first way is going to be literally what I would say to my 18-year-old self in the best attempt to avoid the train wreck. And then the second part is going to be what I would say to an 18-year-old kid if I'm not allowed to say what I say at the beginning. And that'll make sense as I say it. Okay, so to put this all into context, when I was college age, it was right when I was starting to like really, the drinking was ramping up. I was starting to do ecstasy and stimulants and everything. And it was all against a backdrop of severe depression, severe self-loathing, terrible confidence, horrible social anxiety. Pretty much all of that stuff, I had it, and I had it bad. So yeah, it was self-medication with drugs from a very early age. Doing anything it took to avoid the pain of existence and whatnot. So pretty much anything adults said to me at any point just, went in one ear and out the other because I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear any strategy that would imply that I would be having to face all of the pain head on and that I couldn't use the drugs to deflect it and hide. And yeah, so what I wouldn't have listened to myself, if by that logic I wouldn't have listened to myself. But I think there's one thing that would work, or could have worked, possibly would have worked. Curious to know what would have happened. And it's no secret on this channel that I'm a huge proponent of plant-based medicine and psychedelics in a therapeutic setting especially. And, when I was that age, I had just started using psychedelics. I had used mushrooms, I had used 2CB, a couple other ones. And psychedelics were amazing to me. It was amazing getting to know mushrooms especially. And so it was like this pockets of amazing stuff within the context of a life that was otherwise really bad and horrible. Every time I did mushrooms, I would go for like a couple days to a couple weeks afterwards, like with this afterglow, where I felt better about myself. I felt more creative and productive. I'd be getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go running and to study and drink coffee, and I was always like on point for a while. I mean, yeah, like after a couple weeks, I would get invited out to party and everything would fall apart again because I was young and everything. But yeah, like every time I did mushrooms, it would be like it really helped my life for a little period of time. So kind of what I'm going with this is I would say to myself, like, look, you're going to come into contact with psychedelic drugs and you're going to like them, but that's not good enough. I need you to absolutely love them, and I need you to respect them, and I need you to make this a focal point of your life. It was hard because, like, as someone with social anxiety and introversion and stuff, it was hard to get psychedelics. This was before, like, you could buy anything on the internet easily. I took long breaks from psychedelics just because I couldn't get them. And I would say to myself, like, you needed to take this more seriously. Like, there are mature adult communities out there that you can find them and, they'll help you. You need to you need to do this like every couple months. You need to have a psychedelic trip and you need to learn from them. And they're there to help you stay on the right path and to because psychedelics is weird because like they have this like mystical, otherworldly feel to them, but they also can be like really rational with you in the sense that like they can help you rationally see like this thing is not good for my life. I need to cut it out. These things are good for me. I need to focus on them. It can very rationally like guide you in that sense. Whereas otherwise, I start drinking and doing other drugs and it's just like, as someone who self-proclaims himself as very rational and logical and whatnot, I get extremely emotional and nuts when it comes to like intentionally doing things that are destructive and everything, whereas not pursuing things that I can't practice what I preach in that way. So yeah, I would have told my 18-year-old self to really develop a strong relationship with psychedelics, and in turn, by doing more psychedelics, I probably would have done less of the bad, destructive drugs. Now, let's say that I'm not allowed to say that. Let's say that that's encouraging drug use, or I'm saying this to someone else's child and I've been told that I'm not allowed to say that despite believing in it. Then what would I say? And this is really when we run into the situation where there is nothing that can't be said. There's nothing that can be said that would like all out stop the train wreck, but I think there are things that I could say that could be digested and could be somewhat used to mitigate the damage. One of those is basically saying like would be saying, if you're going to destroy your life, whatever, but destroy it in a way that's easy to bounce back from. And what I mean is like I I destroyed my relationships and my bank account and my career and everything, but I destroyed my finances to the point where I mean, I'm going to spend most of my adult life trying to recover from the financial destruction I caused by funding a crazy drug addiction for so many years. If I had done it in a way where I didn't end up with so much debt and horrible credit and everything, it would have been much easier to bounce back. Because yeah, like when you live through an addiction that you never thought you were going to live through, and then you're sitting there clean and sober, full of emotions that are scary, and you're looking at such a crazy financial hole, like that alone, that emotional response to that, because yeah, you can't make amends with credit card debt. You can't make amends with a bad credit score. So face to face with that in early recovery is traumatic, and it can lead people back to wanting to numb the pain. I mean, people commit suicide over their finances all the time. So yeah, that would be one thing. Another thing would just be to like, learn the science of everything and respect the science of drugs, and, spend a little extra money on test kits and safe, sterile equipment and whatever it is. It's definitely worth it. You can help yourself and you can help other people because, kind of like being in online drug communities, like a lot of people are actually somewhat intelligent, but you get out there on the streets, and I'm not trying to be disparaging against anybody, but like I see some stuff out there that it's just like people don't know even the basics in terms of drug safety and whatnot. So, yeah, like learn how to be safe about it, or as safe as you possibly can be, and whatnot. Um, Another thing I would say would be like just learn the basics of not being stupid and getting yourself arrested. This is just little things like not talking about drugs openly on text message, or avoiding being high in public, and just little things that everyone feels invincible until the first time they get arrested. And all it takes is one time for your life to be really, really screwed up. A lot of people might be on career paths that one arrest will destroy your ability forever to get the job that you wanted. I really wanted to, there was a lot of points where I really wanted to go into education and, teaching kids and stuff, and, getting a handful of drug arrests makes it incredibly difficult. I mean, there's a lot of things out there in the education world that I would never pass a background check for and stuff. And, same thing with finance. Like I went to school for mathematical finance, and, a lot of these, fancy jobs with big banks and stuff, like they're not going to hire someone whose credit score is destroyed, or someone with drug arrests and stuff. Like it's very competitive and whatnot. So yeah, try not to get arrested. And then just other stuff, like one more thing is like I would say like learn to just learn to trust your intuition. Like for the longest time I saw like the concept of intuition as like hippie nonsense, because I'm very rational and logical, and despite the fact that I have hippie artwork and tapestries all over my apartment. I like the aesthetics and the sensuality of Eastern religion and everything, but and I do like what a lot of the spiritual teachings and stuff stand for, the metaphysical concepts. But do I absolutely believe it? On whatever they call that, an ontological level. But I think it's a good way to live regardless. But I always saw intuition as kind of like like when people say, "Oh, everything happens for a reason," and you want to be like, "You don't know that. Life is inherently, chaotic and random." If a girl's like, "I knew when I met him," she's like, "I knew it was good. Everything happens for a reason, and the reason he came into my life was this, this, and this." And like people that have that attitude, I'm always just like, maybe it's not the case that everything happens for a reason, or there's no coincidence. Stuff like I always thought intuition is like one of these woo-woo concepts where it's like, oh, my instincts and my intuition say, kind of like a dog not liking someone or whatever. But if you reframe it in the sense of like seeing intuition as being like just the simple act of recognizing if something's bad for your life or if something's good for your life and having the ability to stop. Um, you know, if your intuition says that, doing a certain drug is going to get worse and not better the more you use it, like cut it off. And, and that's something that's like so simple, but yet so freaking hard. But yeah, like developing a relationship with your own intuition, where you have the maturity to be like, I need to get out of this early, or I need to put the brakes on this or that or whatever, and stop like trying to chase something. And the whole concept of repeating the same stupid behavior. Like learn to trust your intuition and get out of things that don't feel right or are feeling destructive. If you can develop that skill, it extends to like relationships and jobs and everything. Like if something doesn't feel right, get out. And yeah, you might make a couple mistakes, but on the whole, if you follow that kind of a practice in life, you're gonna do a lot better in general. But yeah, to summarize, I mean, I don't know what I don't. I mean, I like if someone put me in a high school and wanted me to talk to people about drugs and not falling into drugs, I don't know. I wouldn't have anything to say, like, because in most cases, like people don't want to hear it, and people have to go through their own life and make their own mistakes and everything. Um, and I don't think that making mistakes in life is inherently a bad thing. There's no way to avoid making mistakes, and a life lived with passion and intensity is going to have a lot of bad times to complement the good. So, um, just live and do your best, I guess.